Some sad news to report now. Kelly Clarkson's ex-husband, Brandon Blackstock, has died.
A talent manager who was previously married to Kelly Clarkson and the father of her 2 kids has died. He was 48 years old.
This morning, fans are sending love and condolences to singer Kelly Clarkson after the death of her ex-husband and former manager, Brandon Blackstock.
I'm good. Everything's fine.
News of Brandon's death comes less than a day after Kelly announced she's rescheduling upcoming dates for her Vegas residency show. Kelly revealed on Wednesday the reason behind her break was because Brandon was sick.
The news of his passing shocked the internet, but no one had a more devastating reaction than his ex-wife, Kelly Clarkson. What began as a quiet announcement about postponing her Las Vegas shows quickly unraveled into something far more personal and heartbreaking. Behind the scenes, she was facing a private battle no one in the public truly knew about, until a final message from her ex-husband changed everything. And now, the truth about what really happened is leaving fans stunned, and Kelly holding her family closer than ever. When Kelly Clarkson first took to social media to announce that the remainder of her August Las Vegas residency dates would be postponed, fans were shocked but sympathetic. She'd already faced a cancellation earlier in the summer due to vocal strain, so many assumed this was another case of her pushing herself too hard on stage. But this time, there was something different in her words, something heavier. Instead of citing exhaustion or recovery, Kelly explained that she needed to be fully present for her children. It was a short, carefully worded statement, but the tone said more than the words themselves. Her loyal followers sensed that there was more beneath the surface. Still, no one could have imagined the weight of what was really happening behind closed doors. And just hours later, that weight would come crashing into the public eye. It wasn't until the next day that the true reason began to surface. For over 3 years, Kelly's ex-husband Brandon Blackstock had been quietly fighting a battle with cancer, a fight that very few outside of his inner circle even knew was happening. The news didn't come from Kelly herself, but from Brandon's family, who released a short, heartbreaking statement confirming his passing. They shared that he had faced his illness with courage, and that in the end, he left this world peacefully, surrounded by loved ones. For fans, it was a sudden, jarring revelation. For Kelly, it was the end of a chapter that had been unfolding in private, far away from the spotlight, even as speculation about her personal life swirled in the tabloids. The public had been debating contract rumors, career changes, and even her own health, never knowing that she had been quietly protecting the truth about her children's father all along. For Kelly, this was never about the headlines. It wasn't about her residency, her ratings, or even how the world would interpret her absence. It was about 2 young lives, her 11-year-old daughter River Rose and her 9-year-old son Remington, whose world had just been turned upside down. When she wrote, "I need to be fully present for them," it wasn't just a line in a public statement. It was a promise. The reality was that her children had just lost their father, a man who, despite the divorce and all the bitter court battles, was still a constant in their lives. Kelly knew there was no way to shield them from that pain, but she could walk beside them through it. She could be the steady presence when everything else felt uncertain. And that meant putting everything else on hold. The stage lights, the cameras, the crowds. In moments like this, fame becomes irrelevant. Fans might see a world-class performer or a daytime talk show host, but at home, she was just mom, the person who had to help her kids navigate grief they were far too young to understand. She had to field the impossible questions, comfort the sudden tears, and somehow keep their days feeling safe when nothing felt normal. It's easy to underestimate the emotional toll of those choices. Kelly wasn't just grieving herself, she was carrying the weight of her children's heartbreak, all while the world watched from the outside, speculating and dissecting every move. And yet, she kept the focus where it belonged, not on the drama of the divorce, not on the media frenzy, but on 2 kids who needed their mother more than ever. And in that moment, no career milestone could compare to the responsibility she felt at home. But as the public was about to learn, this tragedy was about far more than a sudden loss. It was also about a quiet, final message that would linger long after Brandon's passing. When the announcement of Brandon's passing reached the public, the statement from his family was short, gentle, and full of grace. It spoke of courage, of dignity, and of how he left this world peacefully, surrounded by those who loved him. But for those closest to him, especially Kelly and their children, there was one part of the story the public didn't see. Before his final moments, Brandon had made sure his kids knew how deeply he loved them. Friends close to the family have quietly shared that he left behind words meant only for River and Remington, a private reassurance that even though he wouldn't be there physically, his love would never fade. It wasn't the kind of grand farewell people imagine. It was quiet, intimate, and deeply personal. And for Kelly, hearing that final message brought a complicated wave of emotions. This was a man she had once built a life with, the father of her children, and someone she had once loved enough to marry. Their relationship had ended in a bitter and public divorce, but those memories, the laughter, the milestones, the family moments couldn't be erased. In that quiet farewell, she was reminded that before the headlines in the courtrooms, there had been a real connection, and that connection would live on in the faces of their children. Kelly didn't rush to share this with the world. She didn't turn it into a press moment or a social media post. Instead, she kept it where it belonged, with the two people it was meant for. But as much as she tried to keep that final moment private, the emotions it stirred would inevitably shape how she faced the days ahead. And those days wouldn't just be about grief. They would be about finding the strength to move forward while honoring a complicated past. In the days following Brandon's passing, Kelly's every move was under a microscope. Paparazzi cameras waited outside venues. Talk show panels debated how she might respond, and online commentators speculated about her feelings toward a man she'd been publicly estranged from for years. But Kelly didn't feed the noise. She didn't issue a dramatic public statement or get drawn into the swirl of media narratives. Instead, she focused on the only thing that truly mattered: her children. Behind closed doors, she became their anchor. Friends say she kept their home environment as stable as possible, protecting them from the endless flood of articles and TV segments dissecting their father's death. She didn't let them get lost in the storm of public curiosity. She was there at breakfast, there at bedtime, there in those quiet in-between moments when grief would sneak in and catch them off guard. And she didn't shy away from her own emotions either. When the tears came, she let her kids see that it was okay to cry. When memories came up, she listened, laughed, and let them talk, even if it hurt. She understood that her role wasn't to erase the pain, but to guide them through it, helping them understand that love and loss can exist side by side. It would have been easy for her to disappear completely, to cancel every project indefinitely. But Kelly knows her children are watching how she moves forward. They're learning from how she handles adversity, from how she speaks about their father, and from the way she chooses grace over bitterness. Even in the shadow of a messy divorce, she's refused to let anger color the way they remember him. And while the outside world was still piecing together the timeline of events, Kelly was already doing the hardest part, helping her kids begin a life where their dad exists only in their memories, their hearts, and in the quiet words he left behind. But even with that focus, she couldn't escape the fact that the story was no longer just theirs. The world was reacting, and in ways that surprised even her. For anyone who followed Kelly and Brandon's divorce, the details were hard to miss. The split had been messy, drawn out, and public, complete with legal disputes over property, custody arrangements, and financial settlements that fueled headlines for months. The bitterness was real, and in interviews, Kelly had been candid about how painful that chapter was for her. Her 2023 album Chemistry was practically a diary of that breakup, with raw lyrics that pulled no punches about heartbreak, betrayal, and disappointment. But when news broke of Brandon's passing, there was none of that edge in her words or actions. She didn't revisit old wounds or air grievances. Instead, she stayed silent on the specifics, choosing to let the public statement from his family speak for itself. For Kelly, this wasn't the time to look back in anger. It was the time to protect her children's memories of their father. Those close to her say she's always been intentional about how she speaks about Brandon in front of River and Remington, even when emotions ran high during the divorce. She avoided letting bitterness seep into her role as a co-parent. And now, with their father gone, she's even more committed to ensuring that they carry the best parts of him forward. It's a choice that speaks volumes. In the entertainment world, it's easy to use tragedy as a platform or to subtly score points in old conflicts. But Kelly didn't go there. She put her energy into shielding her kids from the noise and showing them that respect can still exist, even after love has faded and the relationship has ended. And while she may never speak publicly about the final conversation she had with her ex, her actions since his death have told their own story. one of grace, restraint, and quiet strength. Still, while Kelly kept her words private, the public had plenty to say, and their reaction would become its own powerful force in the days that followed. As soon as the news broke, the public response was immediate and overwhelming. Fans from around the world flooded Kelly's social media with messages of love, sympathy, and encouragement. Thousands wrote directly to River and Remington, reminding them that even though they had lost their father, they were surrounded by people who cared. Some shared their own stories of losing a parent at a young age, offering comfort in ways only those who had been through it could. Celebrities and colleagues in the music and television industries also reached out, both publicly and privately. Fellow artists praised Kelly for her strength, knowing all too well how brutal it can be to navigate personal loss under the blinding glare of fame. Talk show hosts, country music stars, and even former American Idol contestants who had shared stages with Kelly posted tributes to her family, calling her a light in dark times and one of the strongest women in entertainment. What struck many was the shift in tone. In the months before, media coverage of Kelly had often been focused on the messiness of her divorce or gossip about her career moves. But now, the headlines had changed. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't about drama, it was about resilience, motherhood, and the quiet dignity with which she was facing one of the hardest moments of her life. Even fans who had followed her career since You Been Gone days noticed the difference. They weren't just praising her music or her talk show anymore. They were praising her humanity. In a world where celebrity scandals dominate attention, Kelly's handling of this tragedy reminded people that at the end of the day, even global stars face the same heartbreaks as anyone else. But while the outside world was offering kindness, Kelly still had to face an unshakable truth. Life was going to keep moving forward whether she was ready or not. And the question became, how do you keep going when grief has permanently changed the shape of your world? In the weeks that followed, Kelly began the delicate process of stepping back into the rhythm of her life. Her team confirmed that The Kelly Clarkson Show would continue into its 7th season, and that plans for future performances were still in motion, though on her own timeline. It wasn't about rushing back to prove she was fine. It was about moving forward in a way that felt right for her and her children. Friends say she's been intentional about balancing work with home life, keeping her schedule light enough to be there for River and Remington as they adjust to their new reality. The stage and the cameras will always be part of her identity, but for now, they take a back seat to the late-night talks, the school drop-offs, and the moments when her kids just need their mom close. Professionally, she knows the questions will come, about whether she'll address Brandon's passing in her music, whether she'll open up about it in interviews. But Kelly has never been one to share something before she's ready. If and when she chooses to tell that story, it will be on her terms, and not because it's what the headlines want. Still, there's no denying this loss will shape her artistry. Those who've worked with her say they can already see a shift, a deeper emotional weight in her songwriting sessions, a softer but more grounded energy in her conversations. She's carrying her grief, but she's also carrying the lessons it brought, that life is fragile, that love, no matter how complicated, leaves a mark. And that strength isn't about pretending not to hurt. And so, even as the world moves on to the next story, Kelly is stepping forward one day at a time, holding her children's hands and finding a way to weave both love and loss into the fabric of their future. Because while the lights will eventually come back on and the music will play again, the echoes of that final message will always stay with her. In the end, this was never just about a postponed concert or a headline-making tragedy. It was about the quiet spaces where real life happens. Kelly Clarkson has faced plenty of storms in the public eye, but this one was different. This was personal, it was raw, and it was a reminder that no amount of fame can shield you from the moments that break your heart. She didn't turn it into a media spectacle. She didn't try to control the narrative. Instead, she chose grace, privacy, and presence, showing her children that even in the hardest seasons, love and respect can survive loss. For River and Remington, their father's final message will be something they carry forever. And for Kelly, it will be a constant reminder that the bonds we share, however complicated, can outlast the endings we never wanted. As the lights eventually come back on and her career moves forward, this chapter will remain a part of her story, not defined by bitterness, but by the quiet strength it took to honor the past while protecting the future. And maybe that's the real legacy of this moment. Not the tragedy itself, but the way she faced it, with dignity, compassion, and an unshakable love for her children. Because in the end, strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the decision to keep going, hand in hand, one step at a time.